Welcome back, everybody, to the Miami Marlins franchise here on MLB The Show 23. We have made it to the offseason here in season number 1, and we will be going through the entirety of the offseason today leading up to spring training. In the last episode, we finished up season number 1 of the series in which we went 75 and 87, obviously missing out on the playoffs. The team certainly was not horrible this year. We had some guys who performed well. We had some guys who certainly did not perform well, and they will be rewarded and punished with our stud and dud of the year system. This was introduced a couple of episodes ago, and after the regular season, I had you guys vote for the players who exceeded expectations the most, and they will receive a boost in ratings and potential. And then the players who did not live up to expectations, and they will go down in terms of rating and potential. We've got one winner and loser in the majors, and then one winner and loser for the minor leagues as well. So we're going to go over those first before we get into the entirety of the offseason. We will start with our stud of the year at the major league level. The candidates were Nick Fortes, Jean Segura, Trevor Rogers, Edward Cabrera, and Braxton Garrett. Of this group, we've got a first, second, and third place winner. So ultimately, the winner of the stud of the year in the major leagues is catcher Nick Fortes, who received 46% of the votes. If you want to pause and take a look at the voting percentages, you certainly can. But Nick Fortes is our winner, and I think he is deserving of it. I get that the numbers aren't crazy, 16 home runs, 242 average, 709 OPS, but he hit at an above average level at the catcher position. He finished in second place for the National League Gold Glove, and he was a first-time All-Star. So by winning, his rating will go up by 3. Along with that, his potential will also go up by 3 as well. So this is certainly a big boost for Nick Fortes, and hopefully he will be able to capitalize, as we do have some good catchers in the farm system with Joe Mack and one of our recent draft picks, Joel Beltran. Jean Segura, the third baseman, ended up getting second place. Segura had a shaky start to the year, but ever since the All-Star break, he played really well. He was our best position player this year other than Jazz Chisholm, and guys like Chisholm and Sandy Alcantara were not up for the award because they're stars. They are supposed to play like stars. So Segura will go up by 2, and he will also go up by 2 in terms of his potential as well. Jean Segura is under contract for 1 more year, and then after that, Jacob Berry likely will be the full-time third baseman. Edward Cabrera ended up getting third place. Cabrera's numbers were not as good as they were last year, but he did it over a full season, which was the big thing here, and he really showed that he can be a long-term piece in this rotation, so his overall rating will go up by 1, along with his potential as well, and hopefully he can continue to grow to hopefully eventually be a future All-Star for us. Now we've got our dud of the year, players who did not live up to expectations, between Keston Hiura, Jesus Luzardo, and Dylan Floro. Luzardo ended up getting the most votes, around 44.5%, making him the loser of the award, I guess. It's certainly unfortunate because we are planning for Jesus Luzardo still to be a big piece of our team going forward, but the fact of the matter is he was not good at all this year. The numbers speak for themselves. He was a disaster for the most part, and because of that, he will go down in rating by 3, and his potential will also go down as well. So overall, most of his ratings are going to be unchanged for the season. It's like a whole year of progression for him was kind of snapped away. I still think he can be a long-term starter for us, but this certainly is unfortunate in his development. Keston Hiura got the second most votes. I didn't want to put players on the ballot who did not have a large sample size of games. Keston Hiura only had around 200 at-bats, but he was so bad during that stretch that I felt like I was still vindicated to put him on. Hiura's numbers are also terrible. Sub 200 average, OPS barely above 600, WAR at negative 1.2, which is impressive considering he only really played for a third of the year. So his ratings will go down by 2, considering he got second place, and his potential will also go down by 2 as well. Dylan Floro ended up getting third place, and he certainly wasn't like horrible or anything. It's just that in comparison to his recent seasons, his numbers this year were quite a bit worse, which is why I put him on the list, but he still had a positive WAR. He wasn't terrible per se, so because of that, he will only lose 1 rating point, and he will only lose 1 potential point as well. Keep in mind, Floro is a free agent this offseason, so we'll see if we decide to give him an extension or let him go. Along with the major leagues, we also have studs and duds of the year for the minor leagues. Overall, I was really pleased with how most of the guys in our farm system performed, so it was a lot easier finding candidates for the stud of the year, but ultimately we're down to 3. Jacob Berry, the third baseman in Double-A, Gennaro Miller, the two-way star, and Jeff Lindgren. Ultimately, Gennaro Miller would end up winning, grabbing 69%, nice, of the vote. Jacob Berry got 29%, while Jeff Lindgren received, I think, 1, maybe 2 total votes. But Gennaro Miller is certainly deserving. He was the best pitcher in all of the Double-A International League this year. And, of course, he also plays offense as well. He is a two-way player, and because of that, his pitching ratings will go up by 3. I didn't really know what to do with his hitting ratings, however, because I manually changed his hitting ratings throughout the season because they did not automatically go up. So what I decided to do was the pitching ratings, push them up by 3, like all the other players. For the hitting stats, I decided to only knock them up by 2. I think that would be the most fair way to do it, while his potential goes up by 3 as well to an 87. Jacob Berry ended up getting second place. He was the best offensive player in the International League for Double-A this season. He absolutely raked at third base. He was the team's top draft pick last year and certainly lived up to expectations. And I think there's a great shot we will be seeing him in the major leagues next season as long as he performs decently well in Triple-A to start the year. He now has 89 potential, so practically an A. Jeff Lindgren ended up getting 3rd. Unlike our other 2 stud of the year candidates for the minor leagues, Lindgren is not some big-time prospect within our organization, but I still wanted to reward him because he still had a fantastic season for us this year in Double-A, so his rating will go up by 1, as will his potential. He only has 63 potential, but still, I felt like he deserved to be rewarded. I had a hard time finding 3 dud of the year candidates because most of the players in our farm system were really good this year. But I still had to choose 3 guys to nominate for the award. The nominees were first baseman Troy Johnston of Triple-A, left fielder Peyton Burdick, and relief pitcher Huáscar Brazoban. Johnston ended up getting the most votes, making him the loser, if you will, as he ended up getting over 50% of the vote. Troy Johnston did not have a good season. At the first base position, you look for somebody who can hit the ball well, and he certainly did not do that with an OPS of 611 and a WAR at negative 1.4. So his potential will go down along with his rating. He is now only a 60 overall, not good, and his potential, which already was going down throughout the season, is now a 65. Huáscar Brazoban got the second most amount of votes. He didn't pitch a ton this year, but I still feel like he did not perform up to expectations because last year he pitched at a high level in the major leagues. So for him to regress like that, I think he is worthy of a dud of the year nominee. So he will go down in 2 for his overall rating, and his potential will go down as well to a 62. Peyton Burdick got the least amount of votes, making him the best loser, I guess. He's another guy with major league experience who just did not play well for us at Triple-A, so his rating and potential will go down by 1. Not a huge loss for him, but he only had 70 potential, so now that it goes to 69, nice, he will now have D potential going forward. So those are our stud and duds of the year for the majors and the minors. Let me know what you thought of that down below in the comments. We will be continuing to do that throughout the rest of the series, so let me know if you think there's anything we should change with our stud and dud of the year voting, along with the players' rewards and punishments, if you will. So that'll bring us into the offseason now. We will start with the retirements phase, and we did not have anybody in our organization who decided to hang up the cleats. Some notable players around the rest of baseball who are retiring include Zach Greinke, Michael Brantley, Martin Maldonado, Ian Kennedy, Charlie Morton, Cookie Carrasco, David Robertson, Patrick Corbin, and then looking at the bottom here, Rich Hill, Adam Wainwright, Evan Longoria suffered a career-ending injury, Mark Melanson, Miguel Rojas, longtime Marlins shortstop, also of a career-ending injury, Robinson Chirinos, and then Brandon Crawford, who retired of ability despite the fact that he had a really good season for the Giants. There are some free agents who are retiring as well. No Miguel Cabrera, oddly enough, even though he is supposed to retire after this season in real life with his contract expiring. Robinson Cano does make the Hall of Fame. I feel like he won't, at least early on in real life, because of the steroids and whatnot, but he does get in here in MLB The Show. So that will bring us to the offseason. We've got one exclusive right free agent, and that is the closer, Dylan Floro, who, of course, was one of our Dud of the Year candidates. His rating and potential went down a little bit. He's asking for around $5.5 million for a short-term deal, and I don't think we are really willing to pay him that, so we're going to let him walk. We have 2 open spots with our staff, so we're going to look to hire Woody Goodwin to be the new hitting coach. 3 years, $4 million. We also need a new third base coach, so we're going to look to hire Tommy Lasorda. The game says he's 54 years old, which is not true. He's actually dead. So I guess we are hiring the ghost of Tommy Lasorda. He also would not have been 54 if he was alive. He passed away a couple years ago in his 90s. So I don't know where the game got 54 from, but oh well. We're going to simulate to free agency now. Both of the staff we looked to hire ended up accepting as we get an offer from the Twins. I saw Chris Paddock and got intrigued, but they want Woody Landry, so I think that's going to be an easy no. Although Chris Paddock is coming off a good year, but that would be pretty stupid. So there you go. Tommy Lasorda and Woody Goodwin, as I mentioned, are both here. Our staff is entirely filled out going into the offseason. And this is where things get fun. Obviously, free agency is the thing that really stands out. We're going to do the boring, quicker stuff first. We're going to get that out of the way, and then we're going to talk about free agency. So we'll start with the tendering contracts stage. This is for all the players in the organization who do not have at least 3 years of MLB service time. So basically like 85 to 90% of the players on the roster. So we're going to offer pretty much everybody new contracts here. I did not offer anybody a super long-term deal for more than a few years. All of our big-time prospects are in here. All of the young guys at the major league level are here. There are some players towards the bottom who I ended up retracting their offers and cutting them because we did not have enough roster spots. But it wasn't anybody notable who I ultimately decided to cut. Just some irrelevant D potential prospects or older C potential players who just aren't all that good. But pretty much everybody else here is going to be back. Let's take a look at the arbitration stage next. These are for players with at least 3 years of MLB service time. I offered most of the players here arbitration, but not Jazz Chisholm. We'll get back to him in a second. There were some players at the bottom who I decided not to offer, those being Jacob Stallings, Keston Hiura, Garrett Hampson, and Chichi Gonzalez. I just felt their price tags weren't really worth the type of players they are. As for Jazz Chisholm, I want to give him a long-term extension. Jazz Chisholm is obviously a focal point of the team when healthy. Over the last 2 years, he's only played 168 games, so he's basically missed 1 full season. But I do think he is worthy of a long-term deal. 5 years, $60 million with a club option for the 5th year, and it is front-loaded, so he will make more money early into the contract, and ultimately Chisholm would end up accepting. So I'm happy to have him and Sandy Alcantara on pretty team-friendly deals. This contract takes Chisholm through the rest of arbitration and the first 2 years of free agency. I offered him arbitration afterwards anyway in case he didn't accept, but he did, so it's all good. We have to add players to the 40-man roster now if we want to. Anthony Bender is back from Tommy John surgery, so we will be adding him. Jacob Berry will be added to the 40-man as well, so we've now got 40 guys on the 40-man roster. I want to take some guys off so we can have some more room and flexibility to add guys who are already in the organization onto the 40-man, or eventually once we sign free agents who are in the big leagues, they're going to need those spots as well. So we're going to take some guys off who I don't need on the 40-man. Gennaro Miller will be added along with Yuri Perez. I want to get these guys up for spring training. And we do still have 3 open 40-man roster spots, and we can continue to take guys on and off as we wish, as we will now enter free agency. Before we start, I want you guys to keep some things in mind. We are the Miami Marlins. We do not hand out ridiculous contracts. We will not be signing guys like Shohei Ohtani. I just want to say that now before everybody thinks we're going to make a big splash. There are a lot of good pitchers in this free agency class, but not a ton of good position players, with the highest rated one being Matt Chapman, an 85 overall third baseman. Just because I'm not going to make a splash doesn't mean I'm not going to spend some money. I want to make this roster better. In particular, I really want to add to the bullpen, and there are some interesting names. Jordan Hicks is one that really stuck out to me. He's only 27 years old. He's got 5 years of big league experience, and he's coming off a great season with the St. Louis Cardinals. He's had some tough times staying healthy. However, the last 2 years he's been fully healthy, and this year in particular he was really solid. He throws super hard. He's got nasty stuff. The walks per 9 is a little bit high, but other than that, he's really good. We're going to offer him a 2-year, $9 million deal to compete to be our closer going forward. Reynaldo Lopez is up next. He's been a full-time reliever for the White Sox over the last 3 years and has never had a whip above 1. His ERA this year was at 2.17. So in other words, ever since he's been moved to the bullpen, he has been a total beast. And we will look to add him for 2 years, $9.5 million with a player option for the second year. Along with those two guys, we are not done adding to the bullpen as we're going to take a look at lefty Wandy Peralta, who most recently has pitched for the New York Yankees. He also throws super hard. He's got nasty stuff as well. And with the Yankees, he's been really good. This past season, he had a 2.31 ERA and a sub-1 whip. He's 32 years old. He's a veteran. He's been around the block. We're going to give him 1 year for $4 million. So those are the relievers we're going to go after. And we're going to look at one starting position player as well, Harrison Bader, the center fielder of the New York Yankees. Bader's an average offensive player. He doesn't really give you anything special there, but he can hit for contact. He's got decent power, 12 home runs and 29 doubles this year. Only hit for 247 and a 705 OPS. He is a very good defensive player as well. If we were to start him at center field every day, we might look to move Jazz Chisholm back over to shortstop or some other position in the infield. So we're going to give Bader 2 years for $19 million. So those will be the 4 guys we are going to offer to add to the big league team. And we're going to also look to add some prospects as well. There are some A potential free agents. I didn't really want to cheese it. So these are the 3 players we're going to look at: Fernando Cortez, Michael Koo, and Cody Bohannock. You may recognize the name Fernando Cortez because he was actually one of our draft picks last year. We signed him, but for whatever reason, he's in free agency and not on our roster. I don't know why. We literally signed him last year. It's not like we didn't and he showed up in free agency. Speaking of draft picks, if you remember, one of the players we were targeting in last year's draft was Christopher Rice. He ended up going in the compensatory round of the San Francisco Giants. They did not sign him, and here he is in free agency. MLB The Show said unsigned draft picks would often be back in draft classes in future years, but I don't think that's actually true. I think San Diego Studios might have lied to us, or I don't know what, but here he is in free agency. We're not going to offer him a contract right now, but if he's still a free agent come like February or something, I might think about it. So with that, we know our free agency offers, at least for this first stage. That doesn't mean we can't offer guys later, but these are the players we will look at for now. Let's do some simulating, see what happens around the rest of baseball. And we were able to sign pretty much everybody. Harrison Bader has not yet agreed to a deal, but the other players who we offered have all accepted. So we have made big additions to the bullpen. The farm system, we've added some guys as well, and Harrison Bader does not have any other offers. We simulated even forward now. We have made it to the mark where players who are not offered arbitration will enter free agency. So this means some of the guys who we did not offer arbitration to are now in the free agency pool, and that applies to other players around the rest of the league as well. So I did some digging, and there are some guys here who I think it might be worth to take a shot on and invite to spring training. Victor Robles is the first one. The Washington Nationals did not offer him arbitration. Robles at one point in time was a top prospect, and his career actually got off to a good start, but since 2020, he has not been able to swing the bat at all. Raimel Tapia did not get arbitration offered from the Red Sox. He's a good contact hitter. He doesn't strike out a lot, and I think he could be a guy who could be a solid backup outfielder for us. And then along with those two, we're going to take a look at Edmundo Sosa, who was not offered arbitration by the Phillies. Unlike the first 2 players who we offered, those guys are going to be free agents next year. But Sosa actually has 3 years of team control, so he could actually be a solid depth infield piece for us if he were to make the team after spring training. So we're going to offer him a short contract as well. If it doesn't really work out with these guys, it's not a huge deal. We can always DFA them. It's not a major problem. But I think it would be worth it to take a shot on these 3 players because I think there is still some upside left with them. We needed to clear some roster spots as well, so I'm doing some 3-for-1 trades. We're acquiring Adam Seminaris, a starting pitching prospect from the Brewers, in exchange for 3 lesser prospects. I put 3 more guys into the trade finder, and I actually got offered Justin Kramer, who was the generational talent who the Nationals drafted. I could have done that, but again, in the name of realism, I decided not to, and instead we're going to look at Dominic Canzone. He's a 26-year-old outfield prospect with the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's got a little bit of big league experience. He'll be added to the 40-man roster and will get an opportunity to potentially challenge for a roster spot in spring training. The Diamondbacks were looking to open up a 40-man spot, it looked like, and that's what they're going to be doing by trading him after they signed Manuel Margot. Our final trade, we've got another 3-for-1 here, and this time it is with the Philadelphia Phillies. We're going to be looking to add another corner outfield prospect with Ethan Wilson. He's 24 years old, see potential. He also is a lefty bat. I wanted to add more lefty bats into the system. It looks like he had a great season in the minor leagues for the Phillies based on some of his big attribute upgrades. So he as well is on the 40-man roster and will get an opportunity to challenge for a roster spot come spring training. After that, we finally got some activity with other teams in free agency. Josh Hader signed with the Baltimore Orioles, while Julio Urias will be staying in the National League West, joining the rival San Diego Padres. That'll bring us here closer to the end of November. Pretty much everybody who we've offered a contract to at this point has accepted, but we have too many guys on the 40-man roster, so we're going to try to add some flexibility here. We're going to take shortstop Jacob Abaya off, along with Gerard Encarnacion in the outfield, as well as Dominic Canzone, the guy who we just traded for. If these guys get picked up on waivers, I don't think it's a huge deal. I would like to keep these guys in the farm system, but for now, they will be put onto waivers and removed from the 40-man roster. So we will continue to simulate now, getting closer to the end of November. We'll see what happens here as Jacob Abaya does get claimed by Baltimore. The other 2 players we put on waivers were not claimed, so they will stay in the organization, but now off the 40-man roster. We have made it to December. Pretty much everybody has accepted their contracts, so that is good. As Shohei Ohtani, he has finally signed. The Ohtani sweepstakes are done. He signs for 8 years, $280 million with the Los Angeles Dodgers, beating out strong offers from the Rangers and the Giants. So the Dodgers rotation is now Ohtani, Buehler, Gonsolin, Kershaw, and May. That is filthy. Meanwhile, the Angels are god-awful. Luis Severino signs with the Red Sox, so he's jumping ship from the big rival Yankees to Boston. That'll bring us to the Rule 5 draft. Our 40-man roster is full. In a separate save file, I took a look at the guys who would be available in the Rule 5 draft, and nobody really enticed me a whole lot. So I don't think we're missing out on anything here by not adding anybody in the Rule 5, but we'll briefly take a look at some of the other players who were drafted around the league. We ended up losing one prospect in our organization, and it was Dominic Canzone, the outfielder who we just traded for about 5 minutes ago. I don't think it's a super big deal. We are very deep in terms of outfield prospects in the organization, and the 3 players who I traded for him, I maybe would have cut anyways, so it's really not that big of a deal that we lose him. Shout out and salute to Marlin legend Dominic Canzone for all 5 minutes he was on the team. Matt Chapman signs with the Diamondbacks. Aaron Nola signs with the Cardinals. I think he signed there in our Guardians franchise last year as well. We are now into February. The arbitration hearings are here. The free agency class is not good anymore. And at this point, all of the players who were not under contract for the organization are going to be back. At this point, there's only really one hole on the roster, and that's at first base. Woody Landry is obviously a phenomenal prospect, but we need somebody who can start over him for a year or two while he develops in the minor leagues. There were 2 names in the player finder who interested me, Christian Walker and Rowdy Tellez. Both of them are free agents after this upcoming season, so I don't think it would be too hard to get them. I put Christian Walker into the trade finder. It's pretty clear that the Diamondbacks are not going to be willing to trade him. I put Rowdy Tellez in, and the offers are a little bit more reasonable, so I was able to come up with a deal I like. We're going to be trading away Jordan Nwogu and Jose Devers, 2 solid C-potential prospects who could be something down the line for the Brewers, along with Steven Okert, a relief pitcher. He was solid for us this year as a lefty out of the bullpen, but with us signing Wandy Peralta, we don't really need him. Rowdy Tellez is a big-time bat. 32 homers this year, 35 a season ago. He hits for big power, but he's a pretty bad defensive player. His contact is inconsistent, but he can be a middle-of-the-order guy for us, and he can be the first baseman until we've got Woody Landry. We're also going to bring back Jacob Stallings. We don't have a backup catcher, so I decided to re-sign him. And then Yuri Perez's contract will officially be renewed, meaning that our roster is totally set for season number 2. But before we finish the episode, I do want to go over the international free agents. These are your custom-made subscriber players who are being added onto rosters. I received over 120 submissions. Rather than putting everybody in, I randomly chose 30. So here are all of the international free agents on their teams, what their attributes and appearance and whatnot look like. Since there are 30 players here and 30 teams in the majors, each team will be getting one international free agent. Some players are a little bit better than others, but for the most part, all of these guys should eventually be able to contribute at the big league level, whether that's this year or in a few seasons with some development. If you don't see your custom player in here, don't worry. They will automatically be entered for an opportunity to be international free agents in the future. If you have not yet made a custom player, but you would like to, make sure to go join my Discord server. The link is in the description, where you will have an opportunity to submit a prospect who can be an international free agent signing next season. There are some really talented players in here who I think have a really good shot of potentially becoming solid players down the line in the big leagues. Here are some of the infielders now moving into the outfielders. There are a few players at each position for the most part. And again, a lot of really good players here who should instantly become top prospects in these organizations. I didn't want to add all 122 prospect submissions because I didn't want to make the league too good with a bunch of A and B potential prospects being added. So I think doing 30 at a time, one per team, is the most fair way to do it, as we've only got a few more players left to go. You may notice that we do not have an international free agent here. I decided to save him for the end. Our one international free agent is relief pitcher Adonis Takadopoulos. He's 23 years old. He's a lefty from Greece, 6'7", 235 pounds. He's a 69 overall, nice, with B potential, and most notably, he is a submarine-style pitcher. He has a ridiculous breaking ball. He's got nasty stuff, good Ks per 9, pretty good walks per 9. He's got a sinker, a slurve, a curveball, and a forkball. But his durability is only a 60. He has a hard time staying on the field. But when he's on the field, he can be a really good pitcher who's got some devastating pitches. So that'll wrap up the episode, and thus the first offseason in the Miami Marlins franchise. So before we wrap up the episode, I do have a question for everybody. Would you guys like to see a live stream for spring training, likely sometime early this week? Or would you rather we jump right into the regular season and briefly do a 5-minute overview of spring training in the next episode? I'm going to leave a poll on the YouTube community page, so if you would like to vote there, I'm really curious to see what you guys would want. I know when I normally do polls like this, usually the start in the regular season option overwhelmingly wins, but with a lot of roster battles on this team going into spring training and some young guys up, I figured I would still ask the question to see what everybody wants. Hope everybody enjoyed the episode. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.